the next thing you need is Taxii. And so let's play with Taxii. Taxii is the transport protocol to fetch that kind of information from the web about malware and attackers and so on. And you can get it over the network. You can get it from a Linux box. So I've got a Linux box running here. Thankfully, it's Linux, and I can run Linux even on this ARM processor. So this is ARM-based Linux running locally. So let's clear. All right, and so the first thing I'm going to do is this curl. This curl is going to send a post request to this online service called hailataxi.com, which is a free taxi service available for anybody to use. And it's going to fetch a discovery request. And a discovery request is asking this server what kinds of taxi data it has. So I send that up, I get the answer, and the answer is just a big ugly blob of XML that's hard to read. So that's not very fun. That's useful for machines, but it's not very useful for humans. So we're going to make it easier to read by using burp. Now I've installed burp, and it's here. Now one trick when using burp, first thing you have to do is proxy options, proxy intercept, and turn off intercept. That's the first thing. Otherwise it'll block all the traffic and you won't have any fun at all. The next thing is you have to listen on the right address. And to find the right address, in this project I did it this way. I just did traceroute to a public address like 1111. Then you can see how to get out. And apparently 192.168.121.2 is on the way out. So I found an address in that subnet, 192.168.121.1, and it looks like I need to have an address that I can reach from this Linux machine. And so before I went any further, I tried ping that address to make sure you can reach it, 192.168.121.1, and I can reach it, so that will work. So I can use that as a proxy. And so I'm going to feed data through this burp. Now let me get to my HTTP history and clear this old stuff. Okay, and so what I'm going to do is repeat the same request I just made, but I'm going to forward it through burp. And what you do, after you got your burp set up, is this request, but at the end you put in a -x parameter to lead it to the proxy. So I take this mess, and I have to adjust that address to match the IP address on my system, which is 192.168.121. And you'll have to change it for whatever it is on your system. And now, that sends the same message out, and it gets the same answer, but the reason I did it is because it's a whole lot easier to view in burp. So in burp, on the HTTP history tab, there's the request that I just sent, and here's the response, and you can see it's laid out a little bit more friendly. You see here, this is the discovery, here's the collection management, and here's poll. Those are the three categories, and for each of those, it gives you information like what URL to use. So let me go back to my instructions. All right, and the discovery is this service we used right now, which tells you what the server can do. Collection management shows you what data feeds are available, and poll is how you request data from a feed. So what we did right now is discovery, and that gives us enough information to use the other ones. So what we're going to do is build them in burp from now on, where it's nice, graphical, and easier to see than using curl. So we send to the repeater and go to repeater, and now we have the request, and we can modify this request. And the thing to do is now I want to do collection information request. So I changed the folder name to taxi data, and I've changed the XML to start with collection information request. So taxi data, I think I can do that, taxi-data. So up here, instead of discovery, it's data. I gotta have only one D. All right, and this thing, discovery request, should be what's in my clipboard, which is collection information request. This will tell me what collections are available. So I send that, and I'm waiting for a response. Oh, good. Okay. So now I got collections. Here's one. Here's some header information. Here's one called guest.cybercrime tracker. Here's emerging threats rules. Emerging is spelled wrong for some reason. Here's emerging threats spelled correctly. That's annoying. Here's something called Lehigh Education, some kind of college, and so on. There's a variety of these things. And the one we're going to use is Fish Tank, which is, there it is, Fish Tank. This seems to be the one that has the most data. The others, I think, some of them are kind of old and no longer in use or something like that. When I use them, I just don't find very much. So I'm using Fish Tank. All right. So now we know to use Fish Tank, and we have the information of what address to use for that. So we can now send it to repeater again, and now pull from Fish Tank. So the upper part stays the same, and the lower part I replace with this stuff. So let me do that. I'll go back to burp. I'm going to make another version. I can send a repeater again. You can have multiple things in a repeater, so you can go back to this one in case you want to repeat that. And now I'm just going to replace all the XML with this stuff in my clipboard. All right, I can get rid of this garbage. All right, so this is going to go to Fish Tank, and it's going to go from this date and time to that date and time. And I just tried a bunch of date and times until I found one that wasn't overwhelming. This is a 10-minute period in 2018, and that had an interesting amount of data in it. So I just fished around with random numbers until I found one that seemed to give a reasonable amount of data. So we'll send that one. And here's the response. And so you get records. And I think that might just be a header record. And let's go down here and see. You see, this is pretty overwhelming even this way. But here's a URL object type. There's an HTTP. Okay, here's a malicious URL. Some WordPress includes smileys. This is a malicious URL. And that's the URL object value. Here's another one. Those are timestamps. Here's another malicious URL. There. Nope, I'm just seeing other things. So this is pretty irritating to read and full of a lot of extra junk. Let's take a look and see if I find any way to make it reasonable. All right. So you can eventually find a flag in that. But once again, this is not super friendly. It's better than curl, but it's still kind of hard to read. Obviously, it's intended to be processed by machines, and that's what we're going to do. So let me stop this one.